Welcome. I'm Dr. Joe Vitale. Welcome to Awakened Nation with Brad Szollose.
A huge shift is taking place on planet Earth. People seem to be waking up. Tired of the way things used to be, they are creating something brand new and changing the world we live in. My name is Brad Szollose, and I get to sit down with the next generation of idea makers, the disruptors, and the game changers. Everyday people, just like you and me, from all over, who are doing amazing things. Welcome to Awakened Nation.
Hey, everybody. I have Dr. Joe Vitale on the show today. Welcome to the show, Dr. Joe.
Oh, I've been looking forward to this. I showered, shaved, put on a nice t-shirt. I'm all set for you.
I'm excited. For those of you who don't know who Joe is, Dr. Joe Vitale is a globally famous author, marketing guru, movie, TV, and radio personality, musician, and one of the top 50 inspirational speakers in the world. His many best-selling books include The Attraction Factor, Attract Money Now, Zero Limits, and his latest releases, The Miracle, 6 Steps to Enlightenment, and Anything is Possible. A popular leading expert on the law of attraction in many movies, including The Secret, Dr. Vitale discovered the missing secret not revealed in the movie. He's been on Larry King Live, Donnie Deutsch's The Big Idea, CNN, NBC, CBS, ABC, Fox News, Fox and Friends, and Extra TV. He's also been featured in the New York Times and Newsweek, and we're going to talk about everything you do. You're a Qigong practitioner, ordained minister, doctor of metaphysical science. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the show, Dr. Joe Vitale.
It just goes on and on and on, doesn't it?
It's great, but we'll touch base on everything you do. And I've been following you for years, and it is true. If you Google you, there is so much, not just books that you've authored, but practical information that anybody can participate in, including your other programs and things like that. So I encourage anybody who's listening today, if you really want to turn your life around, this is the guy you should listen to. So
thank you.
You're welcome.
Nice.
Thank you so much. I have to start with, how in the heck did this all start? Because I know you were homeless, you were a copywriter, you've done a lot of different things, but how did this all start?
Good Lord. You want to start at birth?
Yes.
I wanted to be an author. I wanted to be a writer when I was a teenager in the 1960s. I had played with possibilities. I thought I was going to be a magician, a baseball player, a heavyweight boxing champion, all kinds of things. But I knew I loved books. And you can see by the screen, well, it's not a green screen, but by the background here, which is a collection of books, that's my life. I'm a bookaholic. So I decided early on to be a writer. But it was in no way, shape, or form an overnight success. It took a lot of struggle. I went through everything for decades, from self-study to self-punishment to homelessness to poverty. My first book was in 1984. And while that was a cause for celebration, it was also one of the greatest disappointments of my life at that point, because I realized publishers don't know anything about marketing. They're just glorified printers. Yeah. And that was a turning point, because I learned marketing. And I had to learn marketing for my first client, which was me. And as I learned marketing and applied marketing, I started to, get a little bit more successful, get a name for myself, and ride the waves of my career. And, I don't know where you want to go with that from there, Brad, because we got the movie The Secret, we've got the internet, we've got artificial intelligence, we've got so many things that I've done, from music to movies to, oh my God. Even my mind gets blown when I start to reflect on it all. So what interests you? Maybe we should just do that.
I was fascinated by The Miracle and the 6 Steps to Enlightenment.
Yeah.
What do you feel is the most important step?
What a great question. Yeah. One of my books is called The Miracle, and I did say it's 6 Steps to Enlightenment. What is the most important step? That is a great question, because there's so many things I could say. I'm going to say 2 words: gratitude and acceptance. Gratitude and acceptance. And these two words are coming to me spontaneously because I didn't know you were going to ask that question. And I don't know that you knew you were going to ask it. And so gratitude, first of all, that's the most powerful thing any of us can do to change our lives at any point, anytime, anywhere. It doesn't cost anything. You just have to pause, look around, and genuinely begin to feel thankful for something in your life. And it could be like I have glasses sitting here. It could be for the glasses. It could be for anything. But you got to have that doorway to open up to gratitude. And then I think the second that came to mind for me was acceptance, which probably is tied into the gratitude. If I'm really feeling grateful in this moment, I'm probably accepting where my life is in this moment. And that's not a complacent place. That's an empowered place. Because if I'm grateful and I'm accepting, now I can say, from here, where do I want to go? What do I want to build? So your question was great. I'll probably be reflecting the rest of the day going, man, Brad asked a great question. I could have answered this way and this way and this way. But I would say gratitude and acceptance.
It's interesting that you say that because it's taken me my whole life to, at the end of the day, I sit there in bed and I reflect and I go, I want to thank God. Thanks, God. Today was an awesome day, even if it went bad.
Right.
And I guess for our listeners, I guess one of the best examples I have from my own life was I used to live in New York City in Manhattan. I had bought my own apartment and I came out one Sunday morning to drive all the way up to Connecticut for a spiritual class. And I came out and I had a flat tire. And I went immediately into that, ready to curse. And then I started laughing. And I realized I just said, thank you. I have a car and an apartment in Manhattan. And I'm a small town kid who has a degree in art. And I get mentioned in Forbes magazine. I have to pinch myself. So let's talk about that a little bit because, here you are talking about, a lot of people, the word spiritual has become a dirty word in some ways, but it's really this gratitude that you speak of. This can turn your life around. Am I right?
Absolutely. And I'm glad that you say at the end of the day, you're saying you give thanks. That's what I do. I have a hot tub and I've moved around a little bit in Texas and I'm about to move again, but I'm going to have a hot tub going with me. Why? Because at the end of the day, I get in the hot tub and I'm relaxing. I don't have any electronics with me. That's where they don't work. And I'm actually talking to the divine, if you will, to God for some other people, from nature, to the source, to the higher power, to the cosmos, to what I've ended up calling the great something. And when I'm talking to the great something, I really go through an inventory of gratitude. And it's not gratitude just because I was homeless. I was in poverty. There's been decades of struggle. Now I'm kind of living the lifestyle of the rich and famous, and that's really cool. But it's really gratitude for the gift of each day of living. Not all days are sunny, but at the end of the day, I go around, I look up and I go, thank you for today. Thank you for how it worked out. Thank you for my life. My God, I'm in a hot tub, for God's sake. I'm relaxing. I made it through another day. And so I find ways to say thank you. And I really do believe you don't have to say it's spiritual. You don't have to say it's religious. It's psychological. It's self-nurturing. Just moving into the direction of thankfulness. There's several movies I'm in now where I tell the same story, and it's the pencil story. I'll tell it real quick in case somebody's heard it. But when I was broken, struggling and living in a dump and nothing was working out and I was broke and I was unpublished and it looked hopeless and I was angry. I was enraged and I was studying all the books. I was going to the library. I was going to free seminars. I was soaking up positivity, but I wasn't living it. I couldn't grasp it. And I kept hearing people talk about, oh, you have to be grateful. And I'd think to myself, yeah, I'll be grateful when the goddamn world gives me a break. Then I'll be grateful. And then I would hear, that's not how it works. You got to be grateful for what you already have. When you're grateful for what you have, then you can get more. And I'm like, yeah, right. That sounds like a scheme. I just wasn't there. And I remember picking up a pencil. I got a pen in my hand right now. But I picked up a pencil and I started to look at it going, and believe me, I was not grateful. I was flippant. Okay, I'm grateful for this pencil. I was not. I said, with this pencil, I can write a grocery list. Well, who cares? I can write a suicide note, and I just might. I can write a poem. I can write a novel. I can write a play. I can write a song. And as I started to go through it, I started to actually feel differently. I started to actually realize, wait a minute, I can change my life with this pencil. I can write my affirmations. I can write my future script. I can write the great American novel. I can write a manifesto that changes the entire world. I can write a movie script. And then I turned the pencil over and there was an eraser. And I went, oh, genius. Now I can erase the suicide note. I can erase the things I don't need on the grocery list. I can edit my books and everything. And I stared at that pencil and I thought, that's a piece of twig with lead in it and a piece of rubber on the other end. And it's genius. Mm-hmm. And I swear to God, Brad, in only a minute or two, about the same length of time it took me to tell that story, I shifted. I actually moved into gratitude and I looked at the same world I was complaining about, but now I saw sunshine and I saw opportunities. I've said repeatedly that moment kind of opened the window of my soul and I started to appreciate life a little better. I was still broke. I was still unknown. I was still unpublished, but something shifted because of that gratitude doorway. And everything has been opening up ever since and still is today because I still practice gratitude. And I tell this story because I tell people, I don't care who you are, what you're going through. It doesn't matter. You can all tell me your sad stories. We all got them. But if you look around and you pick up a pencil or a pen or the glasses or your phone or a drink or whatever is your pet or something, and just start to pretend you're grateful, you will move into an actuality of gratitude. And that transforms your life.
Wow. It's what did they say? Breakdowns create breakthroughs.
Right. Breakdowns to breakthroughs. Yes.
Yeah. It reminds me of a time in my life when I don't know if you remember the show Married with Children.
Of course. Yes.
I have this habit, and maybe you can tell me it's a good thing that I had this habit. I hate television shows where the lead can't get ahead. So I can't watch The Honeymooners. I can't watch, certain shows I just can't watch. But at that time, my wife was really into, Married with Children. She thought it was funny. So there was this phrase that he would say, life is a shoe or whatever. And I started using that phrase. And I got to tell you, Joe, this was the weirdest thing. My life got worse from using that phrase. Yeah. And I wouldn't get hit with one thing. It'd be like two or three things. So the lesson was there, but have you found this to be true? Spirit, whatever, life, God. We get the lesson after we get hit in the back of the head like 3 times. But the reality is we've only noticed the 9th time. It's been doing this for quite some time. How do we stay awake is probably what I'm asking.
Yeah, that's a great question. Also a great observation. It prompts a couple of things in me I want to talk about. One is everything is programming us. Everything. The TV shows we're watching, the music we're listening to, the movies that we're paying attention to, the news, the social media, the conversations around us, the culture that we're in, it's all filtering into us. And we don't know it because we're not awake. We're not conscious. We're going through our lives unconsciously. Most of us, as Thoreau said, are leading lives of quiet desperation, and they don't even know they're doing it because they're unconscious to even that insight. Now, your audience is going to be completely different, so we can speak to that level. What I've learned is that I can only watch television if I'm alert to what it is potentially going to do. I did watch Married with Children. I think it came out in the 70s or 80s. I forget at what point it was out there at this point in time. But I remember thinking to myself, as long as I'm detached from associating with any one of those characters who are all eccentric, they're all zany, they're all comical, and they're all saying what they're saying to get a rise out of us, to make us laugh. And if I can laugh, but not allow the programming to come in, then I can go ahead and be entertained. If I cannot do that, I better change the channel. So my first insight here, or my first reminder to people is you have to pay attention to what you are allowing to program you. One of the reasons I became a musician is that I love music. I play the guitar. You can see some guitars behind me. But I was really tired of some of the most popular music in the world actually being negative programming. My favorite example is the Rolling Stones. I love the Rolling Stones just like just about everybody else on the planet loves them. But if you ever walk around saying, I can't always get what I want, you can thank the Rolling Stones. They've been singing that since 1967. And so a part of us concludes, I can't always get what I want.
Yeah.
Maybe Joe can, maybe Brad can, but I can't always get what I want. Why not? You've got a lyric that has programmed you to think that way.
Yep.
And my screen, I keep calling it a screen, but my bookcases behind me have sayings like be happy. And there's another one on the other side that says expect miracles. These are to counter some of the negative statements out there that people are saying and repeating and promoting, and they're not thinking about what they're doing. Yeah. When people say crap happens or more vulgar versions of it, and you can see bumper stickers on their car, they're not awake because they're programming themselves to create and attract that exact experience. And I'm saying, well, look, science is proving that these thoughts are actually creating your reality. They're creating your perceptions, which create your behaviors. Why not choose them with some sort of alertness and consciousness? And instead of expecting crap, how about expecting miracles? Wherever it is. And so I can go on and on with all of that, but those are some of the insights.
Well, it's true. There's a reason why it's called spelling. You're casting a spell. When they choose somebody for a movie, they go to a casting director. Right. It's all right in front of us. It's just that we choose to watch this. I remember when, regular broadcast television, I figured it out years ago because I took some acting classes and writing classes. It's all catered to middle class thinking and values to bring you down or to pull you up or to give you envy, class envy kind of things. And I realized I have to watch TV the same way. But I think the most important thing I ever saw, I saw this firsthand is when you raise kids. And so I was helping to raise my nephew and he comes running up to me and he goes, I want those Michael Jordan sneakers or whatever. And I said, wait, where did you see this? And they were like $300 sneakers. And we watched, he said he saw it on a cartoon. And I was like, okay. Yeah. So that Saturday I sat down with him and every commercial, everything in the cartoons he watched, I asked, what are they trying to sell you? What are they trying to get you to do? And he I laugh at this now because he was like 9 or 10 years old, not teaching him marketing. Right. And this is so true. Let's delve a little deeper into this programming because it's everywhere nowadays. I mean, you watch a TikTok video, you watch, we literally cannot put down our phones. It seems like.
Yeah, we've become addicted to that. Well, the first thought is television and all of that is called programming anyway. So they're kind of giving us a tip if we're awake enough to listen to it that, hey, we're going to program you. And so it's a matter of, are you going to select the program you would prefer to have operating in your mind and body and your whole biosystem, or are you going to be unconscious and unawake and just let it do whatever it's going to do? So I think being aware of that programming is very smart. I don't watch too much TV, but I do like movies. I greatly enjoy movies. And during the pandemic, like so many people, I binged on different movies that were out there. But I really look for the inspirational movies. In fact, if it's a true story of somebody who surmounted something and achieved something at the end, attracted the great result, it's like, oh, that's the one, especially during a pandemic. I want to feel that power. I want to feel that hope. And so by choosing the movies that I watch, I'm feeding my brain. Right. But this is something most people don't talk about, let alone know anything about or do anything about it. But even the culture we live in, the very culture we're in, I don't know how wide of a reach your audience is, but I've traveled around the world. I've been in countries I didn't think I'd ever go to, like Iran and Russia and Ukraine and countries that are warring with each other. Every one of them has a belief system. I, as an outsider, can see what the belief system is, but they're in it. Right. It's their belief. It's their reality. They don't see it. And so we're doing the same thing. We're in the United States, we have a culture, we have a belief system, we have a way of being, a way of acting. It influences our personality. It influences our views of the world. But almost nobody is actually aware of it until there's a shocking moment, or you watch a show like this and you start to reflect on it, or you go to another country where it's so dramatically different, you start to realize those people are weird, or wait a minute, I'm the weird one to them.
Yeah.
So maybe the difference is in our belief system, our cultures. So there's so much to this. It's fun and it's overwhelming.
A friend had pointed this out to me years ago, and it did make my jaw drop. You just kind of touched on it, and that is every country is an illusion,
right,
of these created, belief systems and things like that. And it's true. You travel anywhere in the world, and some of the things that I do naturally, they're just going to look at me and go, "That guy's a little off. He's a little weird."
Well, I'll take it one more level. There's the last I heard, there's 8 billion people on the planet. So I would say there's 8 billion versions of reality because each individual has their own filter of perceptions, part of which was influenced and created by the culture they were in, part of it by the family they were in, their unique set of parents, part of it by, as they got more conscious, their selections they made as a child, what they were going to do, what they were going to read, what they were going to watch. All of that influenced them. And then along the way, they end up living in their own version of reality. And Brad, I think this is huge. I think this explains why so much of us don't get along, or why even relationships, if two people have similar belief systems, they can get along and even fall in love. But at some point, they're going to find out their belief systems don't actually match.
Right.
They're going to find out that there's some overlap, or there's some conflict. There's some things that they're opposite to. And if they are awake enough, they can actually work it out and realize, oh, these are beliefs I have. Let me see how they jive with your beliefs. Or they can kill each other in the name of their illusions.
Yeah.
So this is another reason why we have to do the inner work and we have to awaken.
I see this. By the way, we're listened to in 85 countries, which shocks me.
That's great.
Australia and Canada are hotbeds. Croatia. Hungary. I mean, I'm just been blown away, but it is astounding to me. And here in the United States, we get to see it even more because state to state, people have different belief systems.
That's right.
You live in Texas and try to compare notes with somebody who lives in Colorado.
Yeah,
you're going to get into a fight, boy.
Right.
And I grew up in Pennsylvania, where they hand you a gun at 10. So I know, I know firsthand culturally.
In the United States alone, we had a civil war here that wasn't all that long ago, when the North and the South, in the very own country, was killing each other. Yeah. I mean, it's appalling when I stop and think about it. But when you look at the research and you look at the history, it was like, that was virtually yesterday.
Yeah. And supposedly more people were killed in the Civil War than like 3 or 4 wars combined. I mean, it was horrific. And we weren't even a full country yet. We only had the states that went from Florida to Massachusetts and west to what is today Tennessee. That was really the country. So I do find this fascinating, but how do you know? And I'm a big fan of this. Let's find the truth, the spiritual word, truth. I'm on a search for truth. How's that? That's better. What is the ultimate truth? I mean, what is the experience we have here? And before you go into this, somebody told me something a few years ago that I found just fascinating to think about. What if God only created one soul and would place that soul in every different 8 billion people on the planet at any different time or space or whatever, because God could do that. So that means we're interacting with each other on so many levels.
Right. Well, actually, I think that is the case. I think that what has happened. I think in the beginning, what was created was not only the one soul that was placed in each person or is in each person as they're born, but I also believe that one soul is in everything. So in other words, the rocks outside, the snake that just went by, the birds flying about, my dog, all of this, that one soul is in there. So in a way, we're talking about non-duality. We're saying at the source inside of us, we are the same. And for me, that's the miracle, and that's the spiritual awakening. I've often led people through a little meditation, and I can just walk them through it and follow along verbally. But it's the idea that I'll ask people what you're thinking right now, right? Got thoughts going on, and everybody does. They're thinking about you and I, and maybe they're thinking about what they're going to do next, but they got thoughts. It's part of the human experience that thoughts are generated and organically just floating up. And we can pay attention to them or not pay attention to them. But what I tell people is notice you are not your thoughts. You're having thoughts, but you're viewing them. You're witnessing them. You're observing them. And that just kind of disassociates from the thoughts just a little bit. And then we go to the emotions and I'll go, how are you feeling? And maybe they're happy. Maybe they're sad. Maybe they're grieving. Maybe they're confused. Maybe whatever. And I'll say it's the same thing with thoughts. You're having emotions and you can attach to the emotions, but you can also observe them and you can describe them and you can share them. Well, if you're not your emotions, because you can review them like this in an objective way, then maybe you're this essence that's viewing the emotions, just like you're the same essence viewing your thoughts. Then we go one more step, your body. You're in this body, this flesh suit, which I sometimes say is this astronaut outfit. You know, we got our little helmet called our head, and we got our visors, which are our eyes, and we can look out into this world and move through it because we're in a suit. But when we look at our suit, we can go, I'd like to change it a little bit, or I like this part, or I don't like this part. But I'm talking about something as if I'm not it. I'm in the suit, talking about the suit. And so then I reflect and I go, look, if you're not your thoughts, you're some essence watching them. And you're not your emotions, you're some being viewing them. And you're not your body, you're inside looking at it. What are you? That essence, that witness, that's the soul. And when I go in to that experience that I just described, that I'm now watching from the viewpoint of the soul, and you do the same thing, that soul in you and that soul in me are the same. They're the same eyeball. It's in Hooponopono, which is a Hawaiian healing process I've written about in 2 or 3 different books. They call it I. And it's not the ego I, it's the divine I that's inside behind it all. If we're going to do any meditation, I think meditating on being it, joining with it, musing with it, merging with it, morphing with it, that's the meditation, because it helps us separate from everything and become one with everything at the same time.
Yeah. I always say that when people go, well, do I have a soul, or did I get a soul when I die? You know, and there's this argument or whatever going back and forth. And I always say to them, you know, when you wake up in the morning and you don't know your name yet, and you aren't completely out of the dream state, and you're just laying there floating, your point of view might be floating near the ceiling, actually. That's an indication of soul, that you are soul, this energy that is in our body. When you look at your hands, you're right. We're in a meat suit and we've dove down here into the lower worlds, as they say, operating like a scuba diver right here in this reality.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. Non-duality is probably closer to what it's all about. Yeah. It's all, you can call it all God, you can call it all soul. If there's a word that is more mutually agreeable to more people, they can use that. But that's divinity right there. That's the divine.
I wanted to ask you this. How did you discover Hooponopono? Am I saying that right?
Hooponopono. Yes, I love Hooponopono. I first heard about it around 2003 when a friend of mine at the time told me this incredible story of some therapist who helped heal an entire ward of mentally ill criminals, but he didn't do it by working with any of them directly. He didn't do it with remote healing. He did some sort of inside-out approach where he did a Hawaiian mystical, crazy, esoteric thing that nobody knew about. And as a result of doing it inside himself, this therapist helped heal this ward. And I heard it and I thought, man, doesn't sound right.
That's what I would have said. Wait a minute, is this Amway or something?
This just sounds like an urban legend. It's like, you're a nice guy, but bring me something that's more factual. I heard it again another 6 months later, or maybe a year later, and I thought, okay, if there's any truth to it, I got to find out. And at that time, there was nothing to dig up. I couldn't find the therapist. There was nothing on Hooponopono. It was in the early days of the internet, and Hooponopono wasn't out there in a big way. But I hired a private investigator to go and find the therapist. I said, I know he worked for the state hospital. I think his name was blah, blah, blah. And I did find him, and I did connect with him, and I had a life-changing experiences with him. We did 3 seminars together, Zero Limits 1, 2, and 3. We wrote the first book, Zero Limits, together. He taught me personally all about Hooponopono, and I have marveled at it ever since. I don't even know where to begin or how to explain it. For those who may not know what it is, it's a very simple process of stating 4 phrases inside yourself as you're feeling whatever is bothering you. And the 4 phrases that you're saying inside yourself, you're pretending you're talking to, I'll say God, but the therapist called it divinity. He was talking to divinity. And the 4 phrases are, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. That's it. I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. So whenever something was going on in my life or anybody else's life, I would say, well, you're feeling it inside yourself, which is a big insight. A lot of people aren't even awake enough to know it. They think the problem's on the outside. Problem isn't on the outside. The trigger might look like it's on the outside, but it's actually in you. Something in you got triggered. Something in you got a button pushed. The upset, the frustration, the anger is inside. And so as we feel that problem inside, we're saying, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, to our connection to divinity, to the great something. We're basically asking it to clear us up of whatever's causing our upset. And in the process of having our beliefs realigned, in some cases cleaned and erased and deleted, the outer world reflects that change, which is why the therapist was able to go to the hospital, and he didn't work on the patients who were dangerous. They were shackled and sedated. They were so unpredictable and violent. He worked on himself. He noticed what he was feeling inside himself when he saw the inmates, did the 4 phrases inside himself, and over time, they got better. They started not to be shackled, not to be sedated, and started to actually be released. 4 years later, that particular ward was closed, and all the inmates were out into the world pronounced as natural again and whole and healthy. Wow. So I've had a long journey with Hooponopono, but to answer your question, it's because I heard a story I didn't quite believe.
That's powerful to think that not only did you start out not believing it, but eventually you're drawn into this very powerful healing modality.
I still do it. I'm doing it right now. The I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you is the background loop in my head. I used to say it was the background tape, but we don't really use tapes anymore. So it's the background self-talk that's going on. And it's my way of cleaning myself so I can be in the moment, I can be present, I can be inspired, and I can get rid of anything that might be in the way of being here now to be of the most value to you and the people watching or listening.
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate that. There is a 5th phrase that I saw. You wrote a book about this as well.
Yeah.
And I saw a video that you did about this. Let's talk about this one, because this one I didn't expect. It kind of blew my mind that it went there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and, I do, because I didn't expect it either. After doing the 4 phrases for 20 years or 15 years, whatever it was, the night before I was doing an advanced Hooponopono training in Texas, and it's a big event, and I had a bunch of people there. I woke up in the middle of the night with inspiration. And this is the way Hooponopono works. As you keep cleaning yourself of your limitations and your perceptions, you actually open yourself to receive inspirations. What the therapist used to tell me is, in every moment, you're either acting from memory or you're acting from inspiration. 99.999% of the time, we're acting from memory. Why? It goes back to what we talked about earlier. We're all programmed. We have all these beliefs. We have all these life experiences that our brain kind of hardwired into, this is how the world works. And so whenever a new moment shows up, we don't treat it as a new moment. We bring in the baggage, the programming, the hacks that worked before, and we apply them to the new moment. So we act from memory. But when you keep cleaning up the past programming, you free yourself to be in the new moment with new awareness and possibly new things to do or say or create. So I woke up in the middle of the night with this inspiration, and it was the 5th phrase. And I had to sit with it for a while to go, this is a little awkward and this is a little unusual. And how am I going to present this? And then it went to, this timing is perfect. I'm at a Hooponopono advanced event. I just got advanced information.
Hello.
I'm the keynote speaker.
Right.
It's my event. Nobody's going to say, get off the stage, Joe. And I presented it. And it does take a little explaining because the fifth phrase, I ended up writing a whole book on it. And you think the fifth phrase would just be, just explain what it is and you're done. No, I had to write a whole book to explain what the fifth phrase is. Because when I first say the phrase, it'll sound like awkward English. I forgives myself is the fifth phrase. I forgives myself. So let me take 1 minute to explain this, even though I got a book that explains it even more deeply. So the fifth phrase, I forgives myself. The I does not refer to your ego. Again, it's referring to divinity. It's referring to the I that's inside of you, the source, the God, the essence, the powerhouse, the energy field. It's without the egoic personality. It's the observer within you. That's the observer within you, which is the God force on the planet. That is I. That I forgives myself. That I forgives myself. The myself is referring to the little self that thinks it did wrong. The little self that has all the perceptions and self-judgments and criticisms of everything we've ever said, everything we've ever thought. And as you know, we are our worst enemies.
Yeah, we really are.
If anybody talked to us the way we talk to ourselves, we would punch them, we would kick them, we would kill them, we would do something. But yet we do it. Yeah. So I forgives myself is shorthand for the divine is forgiving you. The divine has forgiven you. And believe me, over the last few years, besides the pandemic, and I lost my father, I lost my mother, I lost my best friend, family member attempted suicide, went through a divorce. I mean, I've had plenty of opportunity to do self-judgment, plenty of opportunity to practice Hooponopono, and plenty of opportunity to test I forgives myself. It's magical, it's miraculous, and it saved me.
I love it. It's and I'm just going to throw this out because lately on the show, I've had a lot more healers, people who are willing to admit that they are spiritual, even though they might be the CEO of a big corporation, billion-dollar corporation, are people going to do ayahuasca in the middle of nowhere. These healing modalities, and I have to take my hat off to you because you, Bob Proctor, all these people, you started this trend before anybody was, really listening about this or thinking about it. You were at the beginning of that movement starting to grow. And I just find it amazing right now. I chuckle sometimes because it's wonderful to see all these healing modalities come to the surface now, and they're so readily available to all of us.
Yeah. And they're needed. I would say now, it's hard to say now more than ever, because if anybody's read history, we've lived through some very appalling times. Yeah. So by comparison, you might say, you know what, we don't have a civil war in this country, at least not a physical, bloody one. We do have a socially one where people insult each other, especially on social media. But in many ways, we're far better off. We have better times. But at the same time, yes, we're going through things. We need healing modalities. We need to awaken. We need more spirituality. So having these tools at this time in this place, it's a godsend, and probably literally a godsend to help us all. We really do at this point in time need to awaken. We need to awaken to our inner divinity, be less egoic, less triggered by what's going on in the outer, more healing from the inner. And as each of us heals ourselves, we will, by extension, heal the planet. But instead of waiting for the planet to heal, what we have to do is go inside and heal ourselves. And by healing ourselves, we can heal the planet. So the timing is great for all of these tools. I welcome them, and whatever inspiration brings is more.
So true. I have compared it to this. I've had friends who are like, why is such a division today? And blah, blah, blah. And I say, I used to live in New York City, and I will tell you, I never went to a cockfight, but I always say, have you ever seen a movie about a cockfight or any of these things? I said, the two owners of the roosters, they push them together, and the roosters don't seem to understand these two guys are trying to get them into a fight. And so they go, how dare you? You attacked me. And then they go and they fight. And I feel like that's what's happening right now. We are all being triggered and traumas are coming up, and we're reacting to, lack of a better word, the puppet masters behind how we started this conversation, the programming, this is the way you're supposed to think. And, you should hate those people because and the country's going downhill because of, and fill in the blank. And so how do we stay out of that milieu of junk and the programming, get back to, heart-centered thinking?
Well, that's the $1 million question. And I'll tell you what, the therapist, his name was Dr. E. Haleakala Hulin. And Dr. Hulin and I spent a lot of time together, and I would drop him off at the bed and breakfast or hotel he was staying at. And then I'd come back later after he rested and pick him up. I remember one time I came back and I said, I'm just making conversation. What were you doing? Taking a nap? He said, no, I was watching the news. And I was appalled. I was shocked. I said, he was like this guru to me. He's like this spiritual, godlike figure. And I'm like, You're watching the news. Why would you? I tell everybody, don't watch the news. Turn off the news. That's the number one thing you can do to maintain your sanity and your spirituality. And here's this guru to me, Dr. Hulin. He's watching the news. And I said, why were you watching the news? He said, I use it to clean on the problems in the world. And I went, oh my God. He had a very spiritually advanced way of looking at it. Wow. He was watching the news to allow it to trigger him so he could see the triggers within himself. I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you was what he's repeating to dilute the triggers within himself, knowing that the more he did this, he actually was affecting the outer world that was being broadcast as negative news. I never forgot it because I was coming from the point of view of avoidance. Yeah. Like, don't even look over there. That's just going to upset you and you're going to have nightmares. And he's like, no, look right into it. Look right into it, own it, and heal it. So when you ask the question, what do we do? I'm going to give this, you've probably heard this before, but it might be a jarring thought to somebody else who's never heard it before. And that's the idea that all these conflicts that we're going through right now, and all the uncertainty that's out there, and all of the battles, especially on social media, and families fighting among each other over beliefs and customs and what to do, what not to do. I actually believe that the great something, divinity, God, has set it all up. You talked about the cockfight, and the owners are the ones pushing the cocks in there. I think God's pushing us in. I think God's pushing us into these fights so that we awaken to our divinity, to our spirituality. If we don't go into the conflict, we kind of like go about our lives, watch TV, go get the Chinese food or whatever people do as a automatic comfort way of going through their lives. But we've kind of been prodded and pushed, and I can't help but feel the great something is behind it. And why? To cause us to awaken from our own egoic limitations and actually live from the sunlight of divinity within each of us.
We could end the show right there. Boom.
That's before people start calling in.
Yeah. Well, there's two things that are coming out of our conversation. I'm beginning to realize there's the belief, and I've always believed this, but we're talking a bigger scale here. And that is the belief that we are actually shaping our reality, and we have the responsibility to shift that energy to change the outcome, which goes into, what the belief do we know, and all these other, quantum physics and the ION, the Institute of Noetic Sciences, things like that. Our thoughts create reality. So if we want the reality healed, we have to heal ourselves. And so I find that incredibly powerful right there. And then the second part of this is we really do have to work at keeping our vibration high, not just with gratitude, but to bring ourselves back up in vibration.
Yeah, and that's within our field of choice. We don't have to wait for anything to happen. So in other words, bringing our vibration up is just another way of saying setting off endorphins inside of our brain, or doing what makes us happy or giddy or dancing. And it could be dancing. It could be laughing. It could be, I've got a French bulldog, and sometimes I sit beside it and it's sleeping and I'm just petting it. And I just feel my whole body change. It's like, it's not doing anything. I'm not doing anything. It's snoring and I'm petting it. And in that moment, my whole vibration is kind of smoothed out. And I'm smiling when I'm doing it, and I told you about the hot tub for me swimming, told you about music. So for me, making music, but each of us has something that elevates our mood, changes our vibration. So we don't get sucked in and stuck in the muck that is being thrown to us. I think from a more awakened, advanced standpoint, we can use that muck to awaken. We can use that muck as an opportunity to find out, okay, the trigger is in me. The trigger is in me. There's a wonderful book I've read 2 or 3 times. It's called Unoffendable. Unoffendable. And it's more of a Christian book. But every time I read it, and I actually leave the book out, it's by the TV, probably appropriately. It's by the TV, so I see the title. And the title was a reminder not to be offended. Or if I am, that's my opportunity to find out what was the offense, what was the trigger, because it's in me, and then finding a way to dilute it, which goes back to healing our belief systems. Fun stuff.
It's astounding to me, because when I'm listening to you, I've been using that, as a barometer for myself, what to heal. But I had a client get very upset with me the other day, and it's his nature, it's I don't respond, but I started laughing. And he's like, why are you upset? I said, I'm a New Yorker, first of all. I said, I don't get offended easily. I said, it took 35 years to just I said, you're going to have to try harder. I said, but the other side too is maybe there's things that I should be looking at that I don't, simply because I've developed a thick skin. A little bit. And I think some of us, I've seen this, in men and women too. I can't say it's on either one or the other, but sometimes we've been hurt so much, let's say, that we have built up a thick skin, and we just don't even go there. We don't even go down that road. And sometimes it's there. Like you said, sometimes you discover something by accident, but you've been resisting it for years. And I think that's happening right now. Some of the things maybe I resisted, I'm healing right now. I'm working on those things.
Yeah, we don't usually get away with not looking at them. At some point or other, they surface. There was a book years ago called Feelings Buried Alive Never Die. And I think it was Freud who had said that keep no secrets, because whatever you're burying is going to show up, and usually inappropriately later. So it's best that if you get a whiff that there's something to work on, release, heal, that's the sign to do it right then and there.
Very powerful. Very, very powerful. Joe, how do we get a hold of you? Do we go to joevitale.com? Where do we go?
I'm not hiding, so I've got hundreds of websites.
I noticed.
You can go to joevitale.com. I think my portal is Mr. Fire, MRFIRE.com, Mr. Fire. That's been up since the mid 1990s when we went online, not knowing what we were going to do or what we were doing. But it's still there, MrFire.com.
It's fantastic, the work you do. Really admire what you're doing.
Thank you.
We have to talk about you being a musician. You won awards for your work, positive. I have a good friend of mine, David Young. He does the recorder music. And you two should get together. But this is amazing to me. You're also a musician.
Well, I think it's more of an example of somebody seeing what was on his bucket list and deciding to go for it. So 10 years ago, when I had turned 60, I looked at my bucket list and said, musician. I had guitars, I knew 3 chords, and I played a little harmonica, and I thought, I really wanted to pursue this. I wonder if I can write songs. I wonder if I can learn to sing. I wonder if I can get into making an album. Yeah. And I admittedly, and I'm saying this because anytime we do anything new and different, we're going to be uncomfortable. I was terrified. I was terrified. I thought, what if the world thinks I'm an idiot? What if they judge me? You know, they've accepted me as this author, the guy in The Secret, and doing all this other stuff. But suddenly I'm a singer-songwriter. What if this is the worst mistake of my life? And I had to do what I tell everybody to do. When you face those fears and you see those beliefs, you got to hose them down. You got to do Hooponopono or whatever comes to mind to question them to break free. So I did. And as a result, I have recorded 15 albums.
Wow.
6 of them are singer-songwriter albums. Some of my songs have been used in movies. I have one music video. It's probably the most viewed video of anything I've done. It's got over 1 million views, and it's an excerpt from one of my songs. A couple have been nominated for the Posy Awards, which is the Grammys of positive music. And I forget what else. Along the way, I got to study with Melissa Etheridge, which was, I've been a fan. I was a card-carrying fan for 20 years.
She is great.
And I was in her studio, just her and I. And in fact, this is another example of facing your fears. At one point, she said, why don't you sing for me? Oh, God. I'm going to sing for Melissa Etheridge? And I didn't even consider myself a singer. And I'm like, Jesus. And it was, but I did. I did. And that is the whole point. We can all go for the dreams, even when they seem big and they're out of reach. We can all face our fears, even when they feel like they're dragons and they're burning us to the ground. We can all accomplish and attract these things that we've been longing for, maybe secretly. And my going for being a musician, that's just an example. It was an example of what's possible that came from my life experience. And plenty of other stories and other fields we can talk about at another time.
You live life full out. That's all I have to say.
Doing my best.
And you don't age. That's another thing. So this is a testament to some of the work you do. You looked about the same as you did 10, 15 years ago. I mean, you probably don't think so, but you do.
It's one of those where you and I were in that one movie, and I think the movie was 20 years ago. It might have been 15 years ago. So
I just, it was called Openings, The Search for Harry. Yeah. And that's how I got to see your work. I mean, I've seen your work before, but I really got to zoom in on it a little bit. It's a great documentary, and I got a chance to talk about some of those esoteric things we don't get a chance to talk about.
Right.
But I wanted to thank you for being on Awakened Nation. We're about to move into the lightning round. I hope you're ready.
I don't even know what that means, but let's do it. That means
I'm going to ask you questions that help people get to know you a little bit better.
Oh, okay.
My first question is, what is the biggest limitation you had to work through?
The biggest limitation that I've had to work through has been on changing my physical body. I had been overweight since a child. And of course, I mentioned one of the things I wanted to do when I was a teenager was be heavyweight boxing champion of the world.
Yeah.
And then I've been in bodybuilding contests. I know the many famous bodybuilders like Lou Ferrigno and some other ones. And even though I've won 3 medals at one point, when were handed to me by Bill Phillips, who did the Body for Life Challenge, that's been a struggle. There's been a lot of beliefs around it, a lot of ideas of you can't change it, it's just locked into your DNA. And none of that's true. All of those are limiting beliefs. But it's been hard work to wrestle with those.
Yeah, I kind of have the same tape. Yeah, my weight goes up, it goes down, blah, blah, blah. Right. I try. So I completely understand it. And it's, I did martial arts training and still couldn't get down to that 6-pack ab thing, so it was like I gave up at some point, but it's very powerful to I think it's just part of the road of just love yourself. You swim, you get in the hot tub. I think that's perfect.
Well, at this age, I'm not going to go back into bodybuilding, and I'm not going to go running marathons or any of the things I did. I'll play with my dog.
Yeah.
And do that kind of fun stuff.
I was thinking you're doing the opposite of the Hoffman method. He goes into ice baths. You go into the warm. My second question is, do you ever get angry?
Do I ever get angry? Well, the first answer is yes. I'm trying to think, when was the last time? I think it's more appropriate to say that I have gotten frustrated. And frustrated might just be a camouflage word for angry. But it goes back to that book, Unoffendable. It goes back to being aware of the triggers that if I do start to go in the direction of anger, or if I do feel like I'm frustrated, I got to take a deep breath and ask myself what's going on in me. The way most of my life has been, which is probably for most people, is that I look at the other person or the situation and go, that's what's making me frustrated. But It's like, no, that's not what's making me frustrated. There's something in me that thinks, oh, it should be different, or they should act different, or they shouldn't do that, or they should say something different, or that situation should unravel differently. So I would say the times to get frustrated / angry are very few and in between. But yeah, I'm still human. I have the human experience going on. Occasionally that's there.
I was taught to be embarrassed for getting angry as a kid. My father controlled us in the house, and it took me a long time to just let that floodgate out, let it go. And now I'm at that point where it's like, it'll bubble up and then it's gone. I think it's a lifetime of learning to work with it. Yeah. It's just my personal opinion.
I want to say one more thing, because this might be useful to people. And it's the whole idea, especially this is from Stoicism. It might have been Seneca who said it. But if you allow anger to take over, you may say or do something that you will never be able to retrieve.
Yeah.
And with that awareness, it's like, oh, I've got to pull back. I've got to see what the trigger is within me. Because if I do or say something that hurts somebody, hurts me, causes some sort of repercussion, I will never be able to take it back.
It's true.
Ever.
Wow. So true. Yeah. We can't get it back. My last question, and you don't have to answer this, but I know The Secret was a huge part of a lot of people's success. I've actually been on this. I've shared the stage with John Asseroff, and a few people from The Secret live here in Vegas. How did that change your life? I know, from besides having this amazing platform, what was the more esoteric thing that shifted for you after The Secret?
It's another great question, because most people asked about the kind of the branding and the publicity and the marketing aspect of it, which of course I was already making a name for myself as a copywriter and internet marketer. So I had a degree of fame coming from that. But when they put me in the movie The Secret, and of course nobody knew what The Secret was going to do, that blew me into outer space and countries and people and populations that I never would have reached otherwise. Suddenly I'm the self-help teacher, and I was a standout in the movie. I didn't see any of that coming. I think what it did for me, esoterically, psychologically, was give me more confidence. I had always been reluctant to leave or lead with the spiritual view of life that was really core to me, but I didn't really talk about it except in very trusted inner circles. When I finally was invited to do it on the big screen and it was accepted, then I realized, well, people don't want the marketing so much as they want this spirituality. They're actually welcoming my voice and my view and my perspective. That was confidence building, life transforming, and I'm forever grateful, because people still see the movie The Secret today. I still hear from people, and that was like 17 years ago.
Yeah.
So it's fresh for a lot of folks.
It's also interesting. You did a book or a series on what was missing from The Secret, which I thought was really profound as well. Because
I did an audio program called The Missing Secret for Nightingale Conant, and they say it's their #1 best-selling audio program of all time. And they published Zig Ziglar and Tom Hopkins and a long list, Wayne Dyer. And The Missing Secret for me is, the movie The Secret is wonderful. And whether I was in it or not, I'd tell people to go see it. It's inspiring. It's instructive. It helps people awaken. But it's not the be all and end all. It's not the graduate course. It doesn't teach you everything you need to know. And I said, it's kind of limp in certain areas. Like there should be more about action, even though I'm the guy in the movie talking about taking action. And there should be more in the movie about beliefs, because the missing secret is, if you have counter intentions, counter beliefs to your stated intention, you'll either slow yourself down or you'll stop yourself entirely. You won't even know it. You won't be awake to it, and you'll blame the rest of the world.
Yeah.
So there's more to The Secret. And I've always wished Rhonda would have come out with part 2 and part 3 of the movie. Yeah. She's come out with several books, but she never did anything with the follow-ups, which she could have done. Well, and maybe still can.
There's also a lot of subconscious, and to borrow a Yiddish word, mishigas, that we carry around as well. I've learned for myself, my limitations are sitting in there. Yeah. Poverty consciousness, limitation consciousness. And I've noticed this, maybe you can comment on this as we close, but I have it's not a bad habit. I got to stop saying that. It's actually a good habit for me. I think big. I always go big. This show is a reflection of that. It's like, I don't just work with, certain people. I work with some pretty dynamic clients right now. Do you find that, was it easy for you to think big?
Well, not at first. And at first I didn't know how to think big. And in fact, when I was learning marketing, and I'd find these entrepreneurs who would just walk into a building and they'd have these visions for what it could be and how it would be expanded, I was baffled. I was like, how are you thinking like that? Where's that coming from? Yeah. And the thing that I really learned there is that you can teach yourself to think big. And part of what happened for me is reading all the biographies, reading P.T. Barnum, reading the books of Henry Ford, his autobiography, reading books about people who did think big, started to stretch my mind a little bit. Plus, it gave me a kind of unconscious template on how to think big. And the more I read of these different stories, Dan Kennedy, Jay Abraham, all of it, I started to think like it. But I didn't at first. It was confusing, it was baffling, and it was frustrating because I thought, how do they get to think like that? How do I get my brain over there? Yeah. But by reading all these books, I kind of formatted my brain to think a little differently. And so, yeah, I do think big, and I like thinking big. It's exciting. I don't know how I'm going to pull something off, but at the same time, it's like, that's part of the thrill. Let's see how we can do it.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you're stuck in life, please reach out and go to joevitale.com or mrfire.com. Joe, it's been an honor to have you on the show today. I really, really appreciate you being here on Awaken Nation. Thank you.
I loved it. I loved it. Great energy, great enthusiasm, and I can't wait to have further conversations with you. Thank you.
You got it. I appreciate it. Hey, everybody, don't forget, tune in next week, and we'll have another great guest. See you then. Thanks, Joe. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for being a big part of the Awaken Nation movement. This is how you can help me and our extraordinary guests. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please share it out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And let's grow this movement by word of mouth. Our success will be because of you. Thank you, and see you next week.